Are your ulcerative colitis symptoms proving difficult to manage? Tremfya guselkumab can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. At 1 year, many patients taking Tremfya achieved clinical remission, and some patients also achieved endoscopic remission. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor if Tremfya can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video March 27th.
This is the Daily Blast from the New Republic, produced and presented by the DSR Network. I'm your host, Greg Sargent. On Monday afternoon, while President Trump was talking about his new tariffs, Fox News showed him speaking even as a graphic in the corner of the screen showed the markets sliding. That perfectly captures something essential. No matter how much boasting Trump does about the economy, no matter how much propaganda Fox spews about it, the actual metrics are getting worse for him, and the public knows it. Trump's new tariffs on Canada and Mexico are set to start Tuesday, and Trump just announced a new round of tariffs on agricultural products, which could hurt farmers. On top of all that, new polls from Marist and CNN show his approval underwater, including on his priorities and on the economy. Today we're talking about all this with Democratic strategist Simon Rosenberg. We're going to get into whether Democrats are really capitalizing on this moment to the degree that they should. Simon, good to see you again.
Greg, it's great to see you. It's always good to be with the hardest working man in show business.
This is true. By the time listeners hear this, we'll know more, but on Monday, Trump said the tariffs are going forward, 25% across the board on imports from Mexico and Canada. Trump also tweeted that starting April 2nd, tariffs will go into effect on agricultural imports. Trump said this, addressed to the great farmers of the United States, have fun. Simon, I'm going to predict this right now, saying have fun to farmers, which he intends as a positive, as a rallying cry, will go down as a big blunder. It'll be thrown back in his face. What do you think, Simon?
Look, I mean, we are operating so outside of traditional political physics, outside of how democracies operate. I mean, the idea that this guy just gets up every day and proclaims and, his all of his executive orders, and today we have tariffs, tomorrow we'll have something else. It's just the madness of it is what is sort of getting at me today. This feels like the work of a madman who has no strategy, who's just become a wrecking ball in American society. And to your point, what's critical for your listeners to realize is that voters are turning against him. I mean, it's happening very quickly. We've seen significant drops in his approval rating already. We've seen significant drops in consumer confidence since he became president. And using the University of Michigan survey as an example, he was never below 100 in their measure during all of his time pre-pandemic as president. He's in the mid-60s now. So he's lost in that one measure. He's, 1/3 lower than he was during the course of his presidency. And if part of what made him president was this idea that when he was in power, things were better, that's all been lost now already by him. It's evaporated. So, I think that he's looking a lot weaker and more unstable than I think is sort of the conventional wisdom right now. And I think that, Democrats should view this time as he's weak, unstable, fumbling, making enormous mistakes. And we have to be aggressive as hell to communicate all this to the American people.
Well, the Fox News graphic kind of captured this in pretty brutal terms. Trump was talking about his tariffs, and in the lower right-hand corner, you could see a graphic showing the markets tanking. This tanking is due to inflationary fears. Tariffs are a tax that will be paid by American consumers, and it's becoming more and more obvious that we're going to be embroiled in trade wars. I want to bring this up, Simon. The last time Trump did this, farmers got hurt pretty badly by retaliatory tariffs. In 2018 and 2019, agricultural exports suffered huge losses. Simon, what's your take on that dimension of it? Are Democrats setting themselves up to capitalize on it?
The outside pack of the House Democrats announced today that they've dropped ads in 23 districts, attacking Republicans, at least on the Medicaid piece of the economic conversation about the vote on the budget bill last week, where they voted to cut health care to over 80 million Americans, to give tax breaks to Elon Musk and to Donald Trump. And so you're seeing, I think, the Democrats very focused on the economic conversation that's happening right now. I think this has been, and it's working. And I think these ads the DCCC is launching, or the outside super PAC is launching, is a very good sign of how focused the Democrats are about causing pain for Trump on his wild economic program, his inflationary economic program. And let's be very clear, right? The economy is slowing. Inflation is up. The markets are spooked and are underperforming right now. And the voters understand. I think what I've read in the polling data and the consumer confidence data is that there's now already a powerful awareness that Trump equals higher prices, more struggle for working people. And now we're going to also have this play out in the agricultural sector, which is largely in Republican districts, putting additional pressure on the Republicans who are starting to get weak-kneed about these early days of the Trump presidency.
Well, I want to get back to this notion of Democrats focusing on the economy in a second. I think they're putting all their eggs, as it were, in that basket, and they shouldn't be. They should be doing a lot more. I want to come back to that. But first, let's talk about this Marist poll. Trump's approval is only 45%. It's the lowest in the era of polling of any president at the outset. Only 34% of independents approve this performance. Abysmal. 55% overall say the cuts to government are doing more harm than good, and 60% say federal employees are essential. The Elon Musk gambit is just blowing up in his face. Trump is underwater on the economy. In the Marist poll, a plurality say Trump's changes are making it worse, and 57% expect prices to keep rising. Americans don't see him getting prices under control. That's what I take from this. I'm not where you are. I'm not as rosy as you are. I think this is still incredibly touch and go. He's still weirdly given all this credit for the supposedly great economy of his first term, which he destroyed, but never mind that. But still, it looks to me like the numbers are going against him.
Yeah, and I think what's important about what you just said, and you can see this in many other polls too, is that independents have soured on him very, very quickly. I mean, part of what's keeping his numbers up is that his numbers with Republicans are extremely high, right? I mean, up in the 90s, right? So it's preventing, but he's struggling with independents very quickly. And what we learned during the Biden presidency is that independent voters were very attuned towards inflation and prices. And it's one of the reasons we struggled with independents in the election, even though they were with us on things like abortion and climate change and other issues. And you're seeing some of that same dynamic play out. I mean, there is, look, it is unusual for a president to erode this quickly in their presidency, to have people that just voted for them to turn against them this quickly. This is why this movement, I think, is actually a little bit more dramatic than people are saying, because he's now already below his vote in job approval in most of the polls, not all of them, right? And I think it's because of what he's done. People knew, they started coming to understand in November that his economic plan was going to be inflationary, and that it was essentially a betrayal of the core argument that he made during the election. And I think he's really, I think he's playing with fire here politically under traditional political physics, right? He's now in a time when the economy is slowing. We've had these bad GDP numbers. They're now going to hoist tariffs. I mean, it could increase the cost of cars in the United States by over $10,000, right? It's like, it's the opposite of everything he said he was going to do. And I think it's also the other thing that's going to start becoming material to all this is the chaos. Is that whatever you think about the Trump agenda, right, about reforming government and putting tariffs in place or whatever it is, doing all these things so rapidly without any debate, without any transition to tell farmers, hey, good luck, brothers and sisters, like we're about to screw you over unbelievably, have at it, right? And to do it with a month warning as opposed to something that phased in over a year or 2 years or 3 years, it's just cruel. And it is disrespectful to people. It is contemptuous of the American people themselves to put them through this level of unnecessary chaos. And I think this is going to start to become another part of his brand, this kind of Mad King kind of cruelty.
I want to press you on this a little bit, Simon, because I'm not as optimistic as you are on one front. I agree that there's the potential there for the chaos to become a really big factor, but I still worry that Democrats on some level are failing to stand for reform. They're still letting Trump kind of grab the reform/disruption mantle. Now, the disruptions that Trump is unleashing are horrific and destructive, but he's still, I worry, associated in the public mind with reform and not chaos. And Democrats are not grabbing the reform mantle themselves. There's a failure here, isn't there, by the party?
Well, I would say, I wouldn't say, let me phrase it more as an opportunity, that I think that part of what we're doing is going well, this whole economic engagement and their focus on that. But we need to open up a second front. There needs to be a clear now commitment by the Democratic Party to put as much energy into the front that talks about Trump's attack on what I call the America of the Four Freedoms, on his rapid disassembly of the U.S. government itself and the implications that's going to have, the mass unemployment that we may see, which is going to contribute to the economic woes of the economy right now. I mean, Donald Trump inherited one of the strongest economies in American history, and it's amazing how rapidly that's all eroding now.
On the other hand, though, Simon, I should point out, though, that public disapproval of the economy is pretty strong. I think people like you and I were really a little bit off during the election, to put it mildly, when we thought that the strong economy would be enough. It's not just that.
I don't disagree with that. I also think that it's no secret that the Biden team had a very hard time figuring out how to capitalize on that from a political and communication standpoint. But that's water under the bridge now, right? I mean, here we are, and I think it's critical now, given that I think what Trump and Musk are doing are breaking things that are going to be hard to repair. You wrote an amazing piece about this with USAID over the weekend about how there's going to come a point here where these are things that can't get fixed. You know, that millions of people are going to die. The health of the people, of the public health of the people of the world is going to be really shattered, by what we're doing with USAID. And so I think now, in addition to focusing on the economic piece, we have to open up the second front on helping communicate to the American people about the attack and disassembly of the American government itself, and the attack on what I call the America of the Four Freedoms, which in my formulation is this rules-based order abroad and our constitutional order here at home. I don't think we have started to communicate to the American people about how illegal and unconstitutional many of the things are that Trump is doing, and many of the things are that people who work for Musk and the Doge team. I don't think that the American people in this democracy that's been around for almost 250 years are going to be supportive of things that are so obviously a violation of our constitutional order and the way that things have worked here in America. And so I do think we have an opportunity, Greg, to do what you're saying. I think we have an opportunity to engage the American people about what they're really doing and to provide an alternative. I mean, I think Senator Slotkin, is going to be laying out not just the indictment of Trump Tuesday night, but also the path forward for the Democrats and where we need to go. I'm with you on the reform issue. I wrote a column, an essay for the New Republic a year ago, calling on the Democrats to make the reforming of Washington one of our central priorities during the election. You can find it in the New Republic, in fact, from a year ago. So you and I are in sync on this. But I do want to say that I think that we can do two things at the same time. We can continue to push the economic agenda and open up the second front. I think it's required because I think there has to be an urgency around how Trump is breaking things that are going to be very hard to repair. And we need to be doing far more to prevent that from happening than we are right now, in my view.
Today, the beverage aisle looks a lot different than it used to. America's beverage companies are working together. We're delivering the options everyone wants. In fact, nearly 60% of beverages Americans buy have zero sugar. You'll find more variety than ever, including more of your favorites, now available with zero sugar. You'll also find more sizes and clear calorie information on the front of every can, bottle, and pack. We know when it comes to finding balance, the more choices, the better.
At Patron, we craft our tequila using high-quality natural ingredients without additives. No sweeteners, no extracts, no secrets. In fact, Patron's secret ingredient is that we have no secret ingredients. Just 100% additive-free tequila, made with 100% Weber Blue Agave, water, and thyme. Patron, 100% additive-free tequila. Visit patrontequila.com to learn more. The perfect way to enjoy Patron is responsibly. Copyright 2025, imported by Patron Spirits Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Tequila 40% ABV.
To give you credit, you have been making this case fairly regularly that indicting Trump on the economy is not enough, that Democrats need to do more. You've also connected it to other things. You've said that Democrats have to indict Trump for running an attack on our country from within. Elon Musk dismantling the U.S. state, Trump putting a misfit like RFK in charge of public health, which will debilitate one of America's greatest assets. And all the ways these things are directly connected to the ongoing sellout of Ukraine and realignment of the U.S. with the interests of Vladimir Putin and the rising forces of global authoritarianism or fascism. Why, Simon, are Democrats reluctant to do this? Just lay it out for us, man. You know this party well. What the hell?
I'm not sure I totally understand, to be honest. And I think that, I think that you could make the case that we've tried to stay on firm ground, but I think the time for that has passed. I mean, I think that any kind of, after what happened in the Oval Office on Friday, any attempt to sort of downplay the significance of Trump's selling out to Putin and to the possibility that he and Musk are doing Putin's bidding, not just in Ukraine, but in the way it's dismantling the U.S. government, and that this could be, an attack on the United States itself through a different form. However, whatever words we're going to use to describe this, we have to be aware that, this is not something we can wait to the midterms to resolve. We're going to win the midterms by beating them now and defining Trump as being a reckless, irresponsible, mad king now who's doing incredible harm to the American project. And that's why this engagement you're seeing, we need to ratchet it up. We need to get much more aggressive. We need to be much more ambitious. And I've laid out a series of things in my Substack about ways that Congress can be doing much more than they are doing now every day. I think there's a real appetite for it now. And I think you're going to start to see, particularly after Friday, where there was no longer any kind of story you could tell about what Trump's intentions were any longer, that I think you're going to see Democrats being much more aggressive now.
I sure hope so. I want to highlight a key number from a new CNN poll as well. His approval is also underwater in this poll, but critically, it finds that a majority, 52%, say that Trump hasn't paid enough attention to the nation's most important problems. Again, for voters, that's going to be the economy and prices, but I think there's a way to sort of weave that into the case you're making. The insanity with annexing Greenland and stealing the Panama Canal, that sort of stuff, those aren't our most important problems. So if Democrats feel like everything has to be reducible to the kitchen table or whatever, they can at least say it that way, right? Why is Trump, running this authoritarian experiment when there are problems to solve? But talk about the authoritarian experiment.
Yeah. Listen, I go back, when I think about what you just said, I come back to something that I really felt that during the Democratic Convention last year, we were seeing in some ways the most powerful Democratic Party that I had personally engaged with since I had started in this business a long time ago. And the reason why is because I felt our convention was not about progressivism or moderation, or it was about love of country. And there was this powerful patriotism that pulsed through the convention that was really compelling to me. And I think that for us to really defeat Trump, we're going to have to tap into love of country and patriotism, and to hug the flag and all the things that we are the true America. He's the betrayer. He's the appeaser, right, of foreign authoritarians. We have to add this to the narrative because it makes it really powerful. And it also, I think, brings in a lot of Reaganite Republicans, people who were proud of their parties, defeating of the Soviet Union and ending the Cold War. Donald Trump is trying to relitigate the Cold War here to some degree, right? And I think that we can continue to bring people along into our coalition on both fronts, not only the economic front, where I think there's going to be a lot of disappointment in Trump's leadership, there already is, but also in his betrayal of the country and his appeasing of foreign dictators. What could be less American than that? And I think for all the veterans who've served in our country and fought for freedom around the world, who've now been cast out by the Trump administration, he's creating enormous opportunities now for us to go do what I think, Greg, you and I hoped or thought we were going to be able to do in the election, right? Which is to reach out and bring people along. I want to be very clear about what I'm saying here. I don't want to sugarcoat any of this. I think the country's in grave danger and that we need to raise our game here as pro-democracy Democrats and fight at a much higher level if we're going to stop the carnage that is happening all across the country. And so we've got a lot of work to do here. And I think Democrats have to go tap into the patriotism and love of country that's there for all of us. And we've got to get big, and we've got to make big arguments about what he's doing to the greatest democracy in the history of the world. Because I just don't, we saw today in the CBS poll that 4% of Americans support Putin, think that Putin is on the right side of the war. 3% of Americans don't view the Europeans as our allies. Trump is what he's doing with Russia and Ukraine and alienating Europe has the support of about 4 to 5% of the country right now. This is dangerous political terrain for him.
I don't know, Simon. I gotta interrupt you there and say that the problem is that he is casting it as whether we are going to spend treasure abroad or not. I want to try to get you to close this circle a little bit. It's true that the convention displayed a really kind of singularly strong Democratic Party in some senses, but of course, on the economy, it wasn't close to enough. Biden's numbers were a disaster. They lost the election. It was a narrow loss, but it was still a loss, and this was a very winnable race. I guess what I want to try to close on, though, is how do you reconcile these things? Maybe the way to think about it is like this. They did strike a strongly patriotic message that really could have resonated more if it weren't for the fact that Trump was perceived as a magician on the economy, and if it weren't for the fact that there was great nostalgia for the Trump economy of the first term. So maybe where we're getting to here is if Democrats get their economic arguments and policies right, and if Trump economic rule is shown to be a catastrophe, then some of the other arguments have a chance of also breaking through. Is that the way to think about it?
I'm not sure I'm there with you. I don't know that it's this and then. I think we can do both. And I think we have to do both because there is a lack of urgency, in my view, about the things that Trump is breaking now and how they will be difficult, if not impossible, to repair. Your USAID story did a great job explaining what's going to happen to the reputation of the United States if we just literally pull out of 100 countries simultaneously and cause millions of people in these countries to die. I mean, that will affect our standing in these countries potentially for generations. These are things that we have to do more. We can do both, right? We can make our case in the economy, which I think we're doing effectively. And I think the team is the polling is very clear on that. The path forward is very clear on that. But we have to develop this second front. And I think we can do both. And I think if we do, we can start really driving down Trump's numbers in a way that could materially change or let me put it this way, that could materially take these early cracks that are opening in his congressional support, that you're seeing Republicans start to talk openly about their concerns about Russia, about cutting Medicaid, about Elon Musk's attack on the government. You're seeing more vocal opposition to that. We've got to turn that into votes for us that start blocking the Trump agenda and really challenging him. That will come if we work really hard. And if we do, Greg, what you say, but I think we've got to do both because in some ways where you've seen the greatest break from Trump has been on Russia. And that's why it's also to create those cracks and turn them into big cracks, not just little cracks. Right now, the biggest crack in their family is on what's happening with Ukraine and Russia. So I think we have to do both.
Well, I'll tell you, Simon, you and I were both way too optimistic last time around. I think we could both admit to that. Hopefully this time, maybe there's more grounds for believing that he can be beaten. Simon Rosenberg, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Keep the faith, Greg. Thanks for your amazing work.
You've been listening to The Daily Blast with me, your host, Greg Sargent. The Daily Blast is a New Republic podcast and is produced by Riley Fessler and the DSR Network.